Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cocalled. My name is Carlos, and I am here with my co-host,
Carolina.
You are very beautiful today.
Thank you.
You do. I like that color.
Thank you. I've been told this is my color. So,
Right.
yes.
Well, wear it more often. But today we have such an amazing show and prepared for you. I sat with this couple and it was learning after learning after learning. And Eddy and Giselle are just such a beautiful marriage, honestly.
And just as they are beautiful and wise, they are incredibly impressive. Eddy is the president at Lift Orlando, which is an incredible nonprofit organization here in Orlando that brings together business leaders and just for social entrepreneurship. He has been named Orlando's CEO of the Year. He's been named one of the top 50 most influential voices in the nonprofit sector. And so,
talk about impressive. Really, like, that man is impressive.
yes. And of course, just as impressive is his wife, Giselle, who is a career coach and has been a professor and just spans an incredible career leading other leaders in the community. And so this conversation was really powerful to see talk about being co-called, this couple just being so impressive on their own, coming together for an even more extraordinary single vision by God was just such a delight to take in and really hear practically how they've made their marriage work. They've been married for 20 years. They have 2 beautiful kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so how they make life work, these are people that really practice what they preach. And so it was such an honor to have them on the show.
And it was just so amazing, the conversation that we had with them. But I want to remind you to like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. We are on all podcast platforms. We are also on YouTube, and we're on socials. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the interview with Eddy and Giselle. Well, thank you again so much for being here with us on the show. It means so much. Giselle, beautiful. Eddy, thank you so much again.
Eddy, you're okay? What are you gonna do?
Eddy, what can I say?
He's all right.
He's all right.
No, but it is an honor for you guys to be in this this show.
It's an honor for us.
But let's start with how did you guys? Let's get to the nitty gritty of this, How did you guys meet? Like, tell us your backstory.
Well, it is a fun story, and thank you for inviting us. It's a treat for us to be here. I love the name of the podcast, the idea of being co-called. I think it's something that really centered for us as a new relationship. I really wanted somebody who had more of a life than just whatever I was doing and was not just absorbed into supporting me, had interests that I did not have and passions of their own, but then finding out how to mesh that and do it in ways that don't feel like you're each compromising or being less, but somehow a team. And so co-called kind of resonates with a thing we used to talk about a lot early in marriage, was the idea of being a team. Is that if you're a team, you can't win and the other lose. Like you either win together or lose together. So right. Thank you for having a forum like this and inviting these kind of conversations. We met through a mutual friend, still in town. He's a leader of a great nonprofit called the Jobs Partnership. In the early days when the Jobs Partnership started, I was sort of an unofficial groupie, like whatever I could do to help. I could not get enough of serving with this organization. And so we knew each other for years. I was visiting him, and Giselle had begun to serve as a volunteer. I'll get to the first part of the story, and she could, her second part is more interesting. And then I was in his office one day in my late 20s, and he's harassing me about being single still. And I started to describe the perfect woman that I just cannot found yet. And he looked at me and said, "Oh, you're going to marry Giselle Garcia." I was like, who the heck is Giselle Garcia?
Never met her.
Never met her. No idea who he's talking about. Raved about her for like 2 years. And then sort of set me up without me knowing, asked me to come and speak at one of the classes, knowing she would be there as a volunteer. And as soon as I stood up in front of the class and saw this sharp girl in a suit, I was like, oh, that's got to be who he's talking about.
Wait, so you knew she was going to be in the audience?
I did not.
Oh, you did not?
Just the moment I saw her, I knew she
instinct.
had to be the girl that he was talking about. And so I offered to walk her to her car, to pick her brain, a phrase I wasn't allowed to use for a while.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what felt like a 15-minute conversation ended up being much longer.
Yeah.
It's like 2.5 hours by the time.
Wow. That's when you know.
Yes.
Let me pick your brain.
Yeah.
What a line.
Well, he by that point was already working with
at
the organization and wanted to learn, quote unquote, what other volunteers were doing and what that was like. And so he supposedly said, I want to pick your brain as a volunteer to see, what that looks like. And so the backstory is that on the flip side, Mark's assistant also had been talking to me about him. And so she kind of was telling me about him. At this point, I had a boyfriend. So I was like, I'm not even interested. But God knew all things that, was not meant to be.
The plot
and
thickens.
This was. And so fast forward, what was funny is that when we both met, it kind of felt like too soon because we had both been in relationships within 6 months. And so we were like, oh, we're kind of waiting,
Sure.
But literally that night, after that 2.5 hour conversation, I wrote on a sticky like the time, the date, and a song that played on the radio, which was called God Sent. And it was pretty much like the song that says, this is like who God has sent for you. And so I literally knew that night that he was the one. And so fast forward 20
plus years later.
22 years because we've been married now 20 years.
Oh,
and
wow.
From that day till we were married was 2 years.
So I joke around,
That's
Mark
amazing.
could get away with murder with me because I owe him too much.
Yes.
That's incredible. Wow, 20 years it sounds
That's a
like
milestone,
forever
yeah.
in today's age is the reality.
But
And
feels like
so-
2 weeks.
That's when you know you're having fun, Eddie. That's incredible. And you have 2 children as well, which is
Yes,
also
Isabella and
an
Christopher.
amazing feat. What would you say in those early stages of your marriage, coming together, like you were a volunteer, but you both have different careers. So it's not like, you had this thing. And like, I love, Eddie, what you said, that Giselle didn't just jump into whatever you were doing and just be this supporting role. You had your own thing going on. And so in your marriage, how was that navigating, okay, whose turn is it to shine, kind of?
Absolutely. So at the time, I actually went to school for hospitality. I went actually to Cornell for hotel administration, graduated and relocated to Orlando to open up the first hotel Universal opened up, the Portofino.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was super exciting, and I absolutely loved my time there because I helped open up their first 3 hotels. It was a perfect job to have when you're single because the
Yes.
hours are crazy,
Yeah.
but it was so much fun. Like just opening these amazing hotels was so wonderful. I was actually in a sales role by the end of my time there, and my boss was going to promote me to be like, instead of small group, I was going to do large group sales for their groups and conventions for all the hotels. And the ministry that we met through was an opportunity for me to kind of figure out that I actually had a huge passion for helping people that were in job transition. And I just volunteered in this ministry and kind of like learned like how much I love this. So I told my boss the day that she called me in to promote me, I was like, I really think I want to go into something more like HR or career coaching or career advising. And then I, went job searching, found an amazing job as a career advisor at a local university, and did that for quite a few years until we had children. Then I started teaching part-time, which was wonderful because it allowed for me to, have the balance of teaching part-time and then being with the kids. And it was just a wonderful way to kind of use the passion that the Lord really had laid on my heart. But in this, I would say the last, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years, my sweet entrepreneurial husband has been encouraging me, you should do this on your own. And I finally got the courage, I feel like last year, to say, okay, I'm going to, start my own career coaching business. I definitely have the experience because I've been teaching this for 20 plus years,
Right.
but it's just doing it, one-on-one and really helping individuals. So it has been a sweet and amazing journey to do this kind of as a business and to help so many people, and just the reward that I get from just hearing someone say that whatever I shared was so helpful. Wherein in my mind, I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that. Not everybody knows
Right.
that. And so
Right.
it's been really, really sweet. And on the flip side, I've been able to support him in all the different ways that he's helped throughout the community. Like most of the roles that he's had in our marriage, in our 20 years of marriage, have been in nonprofit leadership and equipping leaders. That has pretty much been his main role.
We had this one business for a while. I think our second business we started which was also felt like the holding company was called Business as Ministry because it felt like a platform for supporting entrepreneurs. But it was a holding company, a small operation that owned a couple of franchises for what today you would call co-working,
Okay.
but very service-based. We would have a team of folks that would schedule appointments, answer phones for you, but you could get access to a premium mailing address. And we worked together most closely, like day in, day out, managing team members, serving clients. And I remember talking to a friend about, gosh, how did you guys figure out working together so well? And I said, I think we figured out eventually, like, there's what she's good at and what I'm good at. And, as long as I kind of had my lane and she had her lane, we got along great. And this friend who always has very dry and direct humor says, oh, so you figured out how to work together by not working together. So there was this dynamic. We were really good when our roles were clear.
Yes.
But I think it is a struggle for a lot of couples. So,
Yeah.
especially because we're kind of taught today to, seek your own success, seek to achieve what you want to achieve.
Right.
And if you're not careful, you end up seeing other people, and especially those who love you most, as means to that end.
Right.
Sandy Sugar used to be president of Valencia, and he used to talk about how there are two types of leaders in the world. There's the leader that looks around them, and they realize that everything they see or everyone they know will one day pass. And the only thing that lasts forever is what you build. And so they go on to build great ministries or companies or ventures, but unintentionally they trample over people or use people as means for the end of this great vision that they have. Or on the flip side, there's leaders who, instead of practicing that very materialistic view of the world, they have a more, he called it personalistic view of the world. The idea that they look around and they say, hey, everything I see will no longer exist one day. Maybe the only thing that lasts forever are the relationships we build along the way. And so they still have great visions and build great ministries and great organizations, but they really see the organization and the project or the business as a means to the end of building great relationships along the way. And I've always found that so challenging to think of it that, because it's so easy, particularly as an entrepreneur, you get obsessed about the outcome.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the Lord always reminds us, like, this is just sort of the laboratory for people to connect and come together, oftentimes in ways that are not frictionless,
Yeah.
but they are fruitful if we let them be.
Wow.
When Giselle was talking about her venture, I love that she said that you pushed her to start this herself, which is so crazy. As a co-called marriage, sometimes your spouse is the last person to believe in you.
Yeah, often.
And it's one of those things where we have to change, where it's like, hey, if you don't believe in me, then who's gonna believe in me? And I love that you said, and then you said it right back, where it's like, doing it vice versa.
She's done it 1,000 times more for me than for her.
How did you manage, how have you managed for 20 years to not allow the challenges to get in the way, right? So as an entrepreneur, you just said it's so easy to become obsessed. And we see it now. We have to fight so hard to be intentional with our children and time with them, to be intentional with our marriage outside of what we do at work, even though we see each other all day, every day, to have that intentionality of like that marriage time. How did you guys manage that as you've built? I mean, Lyft is an incredible organization in your career, Giselle, and what you're doing. How have you guys managed those challenges that come with the long nights and the long days and, having to be there for everyone else?
What would you say?
And raising 2 children in the midst of all that.
Yes. One of the very first tips that we got when we were getting married was a sweet pastor from Puerto Rico that was kind of a spiritual father for me. And he said, you have to take just make time for, yourselves. And so from the very early days of our marriage, we just decided and unfortunately, when we got married, there was just a lot of relationships that were falling apart around us. So we decided, this is not something that we could just take for granted. We have to invest in our marriage. So every single year, we make it a point to do absolutely something. It could be a weekend. It can be when I was super pregnant with one of our kids, we just decided to stay in town. We didn't go to a retreat, outside of Orlando, but we stayed in town and did a weekend retreat where we actually would go home every night and not stay at the hotel because it didn't make sense. But it was just making sure that every single year we do something. And we have actually been super fortunate to find this one ministry called Wind-Shaped Marriage. It's run by the Cathy family, Chick-fil-A, that owns Chick-fil-A. And they're in Rome, Georgia, so it's an 8-hour drive, which was a sweet blessing for us when our kids were little, like just having an 8-hour drive with nobody interrupting our conversations.
Oh, you went on these retreats with the kids?
Bliss.
No,
without the
it's
kids.
the fact that the kids were not there
Oh,
that made it
yes.
so
We
magical.
I was like, wait, what?
You had 8, and
8
can you
hours.
imagine that? 8 hours
How
of
is that?
just
Been there, done that.
So yeah, we have for the last 12 years pretty much been going every single year to this
Wow.
one place that is just magical. Even the housekeepers are praying for your marriage, and they tell you.
Wow.
And it's just a great
Amazing.
place. Now, I just recommend everyone just find something,
Find
to
something,
do.
yes.
This place is just amazing because they do have like every single weekend of the year, different retreats with different themes, whether you're a blended family or,
Right.
family with children with special needs. Like they just have retreats for absolutely every couple.
Wow.
And so it's been just a sweet blessing for us to be able to be a part of that. And most recently, we were able to like also just, I guess, be
Host.
trained to host. And so we get to go
Yes.
and just bless other couples
So now
while we're
you
there.
went from attendees to now hosts.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Which is sweet.
The way that he phrased that, and Giselle, I will say, beyond doing something once a year, like having intentional check-ins, just
Yeah.
a mentor of mine told me once that most people will go to their grave without anyone ever knowing their life story. You could be married to somebody for 50 years and there are events that happen any given day that shape them. But in the busyness of life, you barely get a chance to really catch up on that, and they may never actually share it. And so taking the time to actually really get to know the good and the bad and the ugly of the person that you've married, their full life story is such a gift, because it's an experience in grace for someone to know you more deeply and still love you. But the way that Pastor Raymond, that Giselle was talking about, she asked me to, we had dinner with this couple. It meant so much to her. So I was nervous about impressing this man. I'd heard a lot of great things about him.
This was going to be a make it or break it moment for
I know.
Eddy.
And I think, I'm not even sure we were married. I think we had just gotten engaged. And I was kind of getting his pseudo blessing for it. He actually was very direct. He said, I need you to make me 2 promises. And I'm like, okay, what are they? He's like, no. I need you to make me 2 promises that you're going to say yes to whatever I'm going to ask you next. I'm like, I looked at Giselle and I was like, okay, yes. And he says, number 1, I need you to not have a TV in your bedroom. I'm like, I'm sorry? I know too many people, especially leaders, people in ministry, like make that a place for rest and intimacy. It's so easy for guys to be distracted. Number 2, he said, I need you to promise me you're always going to invest in the 3 relationships in your marriage. And I assume he meant me, her, the Lord. We're both people of faith. And he said, no. I know you both love the Lord. I take that for granted. I mean you, her, and the marriage. The marriage has its own needs. You need to cultivate it, nurture it, strengthen it, because there will come seasons where you're not doing well and maybe she's not doing well. But if the marriage is good, you will survive that. But there are seasons where you could be doing great and she's doing fantastic, but the marriage is not doing well at all. You will not last. And so that caution that like you need to be intentional, like you are about your own health or your own children, to get away, go to a retreat. Windshape has been a fantastic. We promote Windshape so much. Our friends claim that we're on commission.
think you're on.
That we get paid to do it. But Google Windshape marriage. That's all you got to do.
Yes, we're going to put it in the show
notes.
notes. Check it out.
Absolutely. But wherever it is, I think for us, we get away early in the year just to do a little bit of kind of planning, just like you do some strategic planning for your business or your ministry, taking time to really think about the future, prioritize goals. And to your point earlier, when we talk about our goals and ambitions for the year, having a real conversation about, well, how are we actually going to do that? Because I got plans to do this. You got plans to do that. We might need to negotiate. Gosh, maybe this is not the year for me to start that new thing. If I want to be supportive of what you're trying to do, or maybe this is how we start the year doing it this way, and then later in the year we can get back around to the other. But often we just don't talk about those very practical details. And then you assume this person has your back. And then they resent that you assume that because they had their own plans. And I think the idea of being a team is saying, let's not compete for time or resources or attention. Let's just spend enough time to coordinate being on the same page so that whatever happens, we decided to go down this path together. It's not like you decided to go and now I'm on this bandwagon I didn't want to be on, which a lot of times feels that way for marriages.
Absolutely.
Can I ask you something? You just mentioned compete.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of couples that really can't distinguish what competing is with your spouse.
Yeah.
I think there's times where it's like, oh, we're just married. We're just talking. But there's a sense of competition.
Like it's just funny banter.
Yeah,
but
like
it's not really
what,
funny.
Like, tell me.
What's the healthy line between
Yeah.
competition and ambition? Maybe.
Yeah, I think.
Or how to distinguish when you're competing, when you're like, okay, I need to draw back because
Yes,
at this
yes.
point I'm now hating
Yeah,
on her gifts.
totally. There's probably a couple things that come to mind for me, but we were talking earlier about the advice early on that marriage is not about going 50-50. It's not about me. I'm going to do my part. We'll meet in the middle. It really is 100-100.
Right.
Like it's me deciding I choose to love this person. And I decide to commit myself to do it sacrificially. Do it when it doesn't feel good. And it candidly, I mean, for guys, I often say, like, if you've dated a girl that you really, really like, you've done a lot of things you don't want to do. You've gone shopping to places you don't want to go to. You've sat through movies you don't want to watch.
You dance salsa.
Ladies, we sacrifice too.
You regularly do it. The problem is the moment you get married, you're like, you feel like you've got it out to you.
You've paid your dues at this point.
Exactly. And so if you carry that over a little bit, like there's plenty of opportunities in marriage to say, you know what, this is a moment for me to lean in. I don't want to do this. I don't want to sacrifice that. But that's actually what love looks like. It doesn't look like the times that you're having fun. It looks like the times that when you are, because you chose to love this person, you choose to go a sacrificial length. And I think if that's the gig from the get-go, that's what I'm signing up for. I love this person. I choose to love this person and I want to love them sacrificially. Then the question about are we competing or not? No, I will choose them first before myself. And so that commitment really helps when you have two people who are really capable, have great talents and amazing careers and demands. Sometimes you're not both going to be capable of delivering 100%. Sometimes all you got in you, we just lost my mother-in-law last year. That was a hard journey for several years with dealing with her health. I mean, there were not days where Giselle had 10% in her, right? Because she spent the whole day dealing with challenges there. So you being committed to meet the whole way, on a good day, it just means that things are wonderful. On an average day, it means you're filling a gap for where your spouse maybe doesn't have enough. And then sometimes you're both at 10%. And you just need to be clear with each other. I don't have much to give right now. And maybe we just need to crash or take a moment. So I think, yes.
You need to go have sex.
That's right. So I think sometimes it's the wrong question, right? We talk about competition because we're going in as two separate people with our own agendas. And if that's the case, then there's only so much time, so much money, so many resources. But if before we show up, we decide, oh, I'm on your team and you're wanting to be with me because you're on my team, then that's a different discussion altogether. It's like, I want you to be successful. It doesn't mean I have to deny my dreams, but now I always think of them in light of yours because I'm committed to yours too. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah.
No, totally. Giselle, question for you. Statistic also shows that it's the female typically that is the one to, what is it?
Sacrifice or
run for divorce.
Oh.
Actually apply for divorce.
Oh, file divorce.
File for
divorce.
Why do you think that is?
I feel like maybe it's so funny because we are so not the typical couple.
I know, but I threw that on just poor Giselle.
No, it is a good question. I feel
my whole dilemma is like, why is it like, what are the males not doing that are pushing the female to do it? Which leans into
what are the males doing?
Or what are the males doing that's pushing the female to do? Because it's like, why they'd have to be so desperate to destroy their nucleus to be happy.
So I mean, I a few things come up. One is just our society, unfortunately, is constantly telling you that you're not happy. Like if you think about every marketing message that we hear every day through every medium, is that you need something to fill that emptiness or that desire that you have, right? And if your faith is not in the Lord, number one, like you get steered towards this vitamin, this supplement, this whatever, massage machine. It could be anything. And in that message, it's actually sometimes telling you that whoever is with you is not enough, is not doing enough. And you start comparing. And unfortunately, social media, I think, has heightened this thing that people are constantly looking at what other relationships look like. And they're like, well, we don't have that. Or we don't go out that many times. Or we don't have those many. Right. We don't have that many vacations or whatever. And it could just, I mean, obviously, unfortunately, it draws this unrealistic picture of what day-to-day looks like, right, in a marriage. And I say that, we're really very, very different, because I have an amazing husband that encourages me every single day. So I literally can't say I really can't relate, because he is so amazing. And that's literally words of affirmation is his love language. So he is constantly pouring over myself and the kids, like, how amazing we are, which is a huge blessing, right? Because you just need to hear that. Yes. And I mean, you hear that from the Lord, right? But you also, it is amazing when you hear that from like the second most important, person in your life. And so that's been really, really sweet. And I feel like when women, as being the majority, like decide to do that, it's because, number one, what he mentioned, like if they're not catching up, if you are living two separate lives where the woman may be having her own job, or maybe she's home and she doesn't know what he is doing every single day, and they are so disconnected that literally their paths begin to just, go in two different directions, and that kind of like road that started together is starting to veer off so much that they're living two completely separate lives. And I feel that is what leads a lot of them to say, like, hey, this isn't working out. Obviously, everybody else has it better than I do, because that's what they're seeing.
The phrase, we've grown apart.
Yes. Yeah. And the reality is that if you're super intentional from the very beginning, and if you're constantly trying to, reunite, make connections, take time every year to like foster that love, that passion, that, all the things that you need just to, it is so much better. I feel like our relationship is so much better today than it was when we got married. And we were so in love, with that. But it's just, I feel like the longer we're together, just the more beautiful the relationship gets, and the more we kind of fall in love with each other.
Did you always think this way, or was it a process?
Well, I heard a study a while ago that said that most people having thriving marriages have been married more than 7 years. And there's something about, when you pull the cord too early on something that still has a lot more time to ripen, to get sweet, to get good. And I think a lot of times, what Giselle said, the societal pressures on standards and expectations. I also think for a really, really long time, it was no big deal for men to divorce women wanton and without any good reason. There's a reason why, Christ talks in the Gospels about divorce. It's primarily about the abuse brought upon women by abandoning them through the instrument of divorce. Right. It was less about the sort of the religious attachment to it. It was more about it was an instrument for men to abandon their obligation to their families. I think for a lot of women to assert their capacity to be able to set themselves free from a dysfunctional or unhealthy relationship. There's a little bit there about just trying to also assert their freedom and right to do that. But if you step back before the divorce question, this idea of like how we really enter into that exchange, there's something about being so committed to wanting to experience the journey that comes over time. So, for example, I always think about people that I meet that have been married 60, 70, 50, 40 years, but seem crazy in love with their spouse. And half the time, if you're really like objective in listening to them, they've constructed this image of this person, of how perfect and amazing their wife is. It might be true, but it's also partly that they've projected this onto this person. And I realize that is an option, just like, you meet somebody, you marry, they got some quirks, there's some issues that you might have noticed when you were dating, but now they really bug you because you live with them. And you can spend every day thinking about how much that bugs you. And eventually you will grow to hate that person because where your attention goes, that grows. Absolutely. And in a lot of marriages, people don't know how to look away from the negative thing. So they keep looking at it, they keep noticing it, they keep mentioning it, they keep bringing it up, they keep thinking about it. And eventually that grows to like everything you see in this person is their flaw. Like this list of negative things. Well, the opposite is also an option. I could keep reminding myself all the things I love about this person, all the great surprises about who they are, all the funny moments, the moments that they've really made me feel so special. And the more I do that, that's the side of them that will grow in my heart. And so when I choose that path, over time, it is actually possible, just like it's possible to grow apart, fall out of love, actually hate someone's guts. You can grow closer together, fall in love over and over again, be insanely, madly in love with someone that you've known for most of your life. But that doesn't happen by accident.
Right.
And humans always pay more attention to negative things. So you have to try harder to do this. You just need to let life happen to fall into criticism and cynicism and really judging this person that really you're in it for life with. And so you can choose to be miserable or end up in divorce, or choose to really love and find that this person becomes like a flower, like they blossom and the things you appreciate start to grow and multiply. I heard a stat just this last week. The rate of divorce is down dramatically. But not the rate of divorce, the rate of marriages is down, right? So the number of people getting married, but the number of people choosing to get married are staying together longer. And so less people who decide, okay, I am going to do this and I don't want to have a broken home and I want to make sure be committed to it. They're working harder to avoid divorce and stay married. And I think those are really the options. You can choose to bail on marriage altogether because it is not for the faint of heart. And you've got your set of options there. But if you're going to do it, do it. Like don't just say you're going to be with a person the rest of your life and then just be selfish about the way you lead your life.
I love that.
If you commit to it, man, there's treasures waiting on the other side of that decision.
Yeah. I remember when Carlos and I were going through just a hard season in our marriage. And it's funny because it was right around that 7-year mark.
Absolutely.
And I mean, when Carlos and I got married, I would always look at him and tell him, you're a leader, dude. Like you're called, like, I don't know. It was a supernatural, like I would just see him and I would tell him though, I see you how God sees you. Like, I know that everyone thinks you're just this funny guy and like you say inappropriate things at appropriate times and like
talking
it's
about
your defense mechanism.
It's natural. And this is a podcast about marriage.
You weren't going to let that one go. I really, really see him how God sees him. And so even when he wouldn't see himself that way, I remember the Holy Spirit revealing to me, you have the power as the wife, the closest person to him, to either nag him down or pray him up. I'm going to let you choose what you're going to do in this moment. And I did. And I just started, talk about, speaking without seeing. Like I would just tell him, you're a leader, babe. You're going to be an incredible entrepreneur. All these things that he truly did not believe about himself. And we've talked about this in other episodes. So that's why I'm speaking so candidly.
She just wants to make me cry.
No. But I think to your point, it's so important. It is a choice. It is a choice we make. And I think
it's also how you made it. How you make that choice. Because on the contrary, what if you had been a pest and like a thorn on my side and like, you're a leader, you're this, you're that. And it's like, you're just not happy with who I am.
Thing.
I'm just
and now it brings all this insecurities where I think you really just laid it off. And obviously in silence and in quiet, you kept praying me up until the moment came where I'm like, I'm a badass. I can do this.
This is true of people, of children, of dogs. It's especially true of men that we rise up to the expectations our wives have of us. And I think all too often, sometimes unintentionally, and maternal instincts kick in, and wives start acting in a way that's more pandering, and they don't realize they're lowering the bar.
Right.
I had a client once who we became friends enough that she started to share with me this sort of struggle that her husband wasn't attending church, was not active in his faith, didn't feel like he was leading, and in the middle of the conversation, this idea came up, like I have this phrase I love, to love people as is, but treat them as if. Like accept people exactly as they come. Get to know all their flaws as quickly as possible. Right. And then decide if you want to love them, and then love them just as is. Not with the hope that they're going to get better or smarter or prettier. No, can you love them as is and accept them fully? But then treat them as if they were all those things you thought they were. And man, she locked in on that and just she stopped nagging, stopped asking him to do stuff or go to church or do things, started just kind of coming to him for advice, which she didn't do. She was kind of the main breadwinner, had a great job, was this really successful person. But she started deferring to him on his counsel and seeking for his wisdom. And then out of the blue, like she was used to always putting their daughter to bed and saying a little prayer together. One evening he walked in the room. What are you guys doing? He's like, oh, we're just kind of tucking. He said, okay, like, can I pray? And he just led them in prayer for the first time. Then, said grace over a meal out of the blue. And before you know it, he's like, one Sunday morning, she was tired. She wasn't thinking of going to church. He's like, what are you doing? She says, I think I'm going to just stay home today. He's like, what? No, we should go to church. We should go to church.
Wow.
And so got dressed, went to church. 6 months later, I see her. She's like, he's like fishing buddies with the pastor.
No.
He's super involved as an usher and doing all these things and just
That's
has a genuine faith and is in every way everything I hoped he would be. But I stopped demanding that of him and started treating him as if he already was that person.
Wow.
And I think that does wonders on all of us. I know Giselle has done for me what you've done for him, the idea of seeing in me what I forget to see in myself,
Right.
Or sometimes I've never even seen in myself. We all need that desperately. And it's a core part of what I think it means to be in marriage. There's a reason why God looks at Adam and says, it is not good that he be alone.
It is not good, buddy. It's not good. You think twice over there.
That's right. That's right.
That's
No,
amazing.
I love
Well, we really appreciate this conversation and the time you've taken and just sharing so vulnerably what's worked for you and what's been good for you. If you were to talk to Giselle and Eddy 20 years ago when they were first starting, and maybe, I think you guys, it sounded like you had a lot of sound advice around you, which was such a gift. Obviously, we see the fruit of that today. We have a lot of listeners that don't have perhaps that sound advice around them. What advice would you give those couples that are starting out, that are in those first 7 years of marriage and they're finding themselves out and figuring out what it looks like for them to be co-called? What would you tell them?
I would start with just take, even if it's 10 minutes a day, to just catch up on your days, because there's so much that happens in a day that if you could, and even if you have little kids, I would say especially if you have little kids, teaching your kids that they used to call it couch time, that you're going to sit on the couch for 10 minutes and you're just going to catch up with each other before you address all of their needs and everything else that's happening around you. That shows your children that your marriage comes first, that, this is really, really important. And if you don't have kids, just catching up so that you know what's happening in each other's lives, you know how to pray for each other, you know how to just address each other and know when you have to give a little bit more because your spouse doesn't have it in them, to meet you.
Right.
That is super, super important.
Yeah, that is
So
huge. And, there's a lot of studies that show kids, like the best thing you could do for your kids is show them a really healthy marriage, that you
Right.
two are deeply in love with each other. I'd say you mentioned that 7-year mark. A lot of people talk about that in marriages. I would advise younger me, something that I learned. I think we'd been married about 7 years, and I thought by every means our marriage was great. But I would have said, man, there's just a little bit, like sometimes we just have this tension, and I would describe it as the tone. Like Giselle would say something to me, and it somehow sounded condescending or offensive to my ego. And that whole book, Love and Respect, right? And guys being so obsessed with being respected. And she walked into my office at home and asked me to take care of something. I don't know what it was, but I clearly felt like I was being scolded somehow, like a child. And
I think I asked for you to take out the trash.
It was like the silliest thing. And I'm falling out behind her, and I am like, just like the argument, my comeback is mounting inside of me. And by God's grace, I feel like it was the Holy Spirit just sort of checked me to kind of see what was happening inside of me. And the little voice in my head was like, this woman loves you. This woman would never intentionally do something to offend you or say something to hurt your feelings. So whatever this stuff is going on inside of you, that's you. That's all you. So why don't you put that in check? Because then what would happen is that I would say something in reaction to what I thought I heard, which was nowhere near what she was trying to say or do. Then she would be shocked by whatever my tone was. Then she would react to and then you'd end this death spiral. It's that scene in the Tom Cruise movie, the remake of Top Gun,
Top Gun.
right?
Yeah,
Where
yeah,
Maverick,
yeah.
where they're like stuck in this death spiral. Like marriages do that all the time. And sometimes
Yeah.
3, 4, 5, 6 times a day where you have a really dumb argument that's not even about what you're talking about.
Right.
And so much pain can come out of that because accidentally you'll say something, you'll hurt in ways that you can't undo or unsay. And so learning around that point to just shortcut that process. Like when that gets triggered, when I'm going to like react to something, if I give in, I start the cycle. But if I don't give in, one of my easiest little things, especially for guys in the car with your wife, and your wife wants to be so helpful to give you directions to a place that you've already been to 100 times and know exactly how to get there. And that is such a common trigger where you're like, I know how to get there, babe. I don't need you to tell me. And then
Who's
before
driving?
you know it,
Who's
exactly.
driving?
You know what? My favorite go-to is just say thank you. She wants to give me advice, tell me, oh, thank you, babe. You know?
Is that with or without the eye roll, Eddie?
You start wherever you can, If it has to come with the eye roll, it comes with the eye roll. But as long as it does not start the spiral.
Right. Yes, that's good. That's good.
Love it. Yeah, thanks for that, Eddie. I love sitting with couples that are, I don't know, like I feel like the genuineness and the realness is in them.
It's the gray hairs.
Honestly, I think so. Look at it. I guess. But I also love just to seeing God's calling in your life, where you have your own thing, you have your own thing, and it comes out in its right time. Like it doesn't have to happen all at the same time together. With us, it's been that way, and then now we're working together all the time, but it's just very encouraging. So thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable and just letting us know all the tips and tricks of you guys. But Eddie, how can our audience find out more about your organization and what you're doing? And Giselle, same. We'll start with Giselle, ladies first.
Yes.
LinkedIn is really the place because I'm a career coach. Job seekers are on LinkedIn already. So just Giselle Moratin, and on LinkedIn is the best place to find me.
Amazing.
Yeah, people can find us at liftorlando.org. I follow Giselle a little bit, posting on LinkedIn on a regular basis. Mostly business leaders, people with a philanthropic heart who want to impact the parts in our community that we've left behind in many ways. There's so many great families and children with bright futures and amazing talents that if we just resource them with more great options to choose from, obviously they would build amazing lives just like other parts of our city can do more easily. And so those are probably two great places to follow me on LinkedIn or check out our website at liftorlando.org and absolutely Google Wind-Shaped Marriage.
Yes.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Cocalled. Please share, subscribe, share this episode with other couples that you know are just going to be blessed by this conversation. Until next time.
Cocalled.